Hey everyone, my name's Kristian Bouw, founder and CEO at Notion Theory, and I'm an outlier.
Welcome to Outlier on Air with Ever Gonzalez, the show where we interview the founders, disruptors, and mavens of the world. Learn how grit, failure, and success are all a part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, the podcast where we interview founders, disruptors, and mavens. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have Kristian Bouw. He is the founder and developer of Notion Theory. Kristian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ever. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on for a couple different reasons, but we want to talk about your entrepreneurial story. We want to talk about the company you're working with now, and then just kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of being an entrepreneur. And so thank you for being on.
No, thank you for having me. Excited to get started.
So let's get started with this. Tell us where you're calling us from right now.
I am out of a very small phone booth in a WeWork in Washington, D.C. in DuPont Circle, and I think the majority of people will likely know what that is. I do feel like Superman, though. I'm just ready to bust out of this.
I love it. So now you're not visiting. You're there in D.C. now, right? You're living there.
Yes, so we have headquarters here in DC, 6 people at the office, and we were working remotely as a team, the first 5 of us, and we decided to kind of move everyone together so we were all in the same space. And so everyone packed with their bags. They came to DC, and so the whole team lives and works in the capital.
Okay, I want to talk about the company and then why you decided to kind of come together.
Yes.
But before we get into that, let's talk about DC for a sec. What's the, we've done 350 interviews or so. Wow. I can't think of anybody that we've interviewed out of DC, doing a business out of DC.
What?
So you're the first.
Okay.
So I'm interested. What's the entrepreneurial vibe and just start a community there in DC? Obviously DC is known for a lot of other things. What's it like for this?
DC as a whole, it's really unique because it's got kind of this trifecta where you have the kind of private institutions, large tech companies, you have the governmental institutions, you kind of have these nonprofits. And so it's a really interesting area because a multitude of businesses and a bunch of different disciplines can really thrive in the ecosystem. And of course, with the government and nonprofit organizations being in the area, there's a lot of opportunities for grants and funding that don't follow the traditional angel and VC route for companies to kind of get started and move forward. So there's a lot of initiatives in the area to kind of get early stage companies pick them up off the ground and kind of get them running.
And is that why you moved from North Carolina to DC?
No. So I would say when we were in North Carolina, when we had the idea for the company, we were looking at San Francisco, New York, and Washington, D.C. And so I guess just to jog everyone's memory on Notion Theory, we help companies build and deliver their products to the market in 6 weeks. And so we specialize in web, mobile, hardware, and virtual reality products. And looking at those 3 markets, New York, San Francisco, and D.C., and kind of being in the services space, it's a lot about relationships because you're trying to build trust with people. Because if you're just trying out a SaaS product, you give up your email, you get a 14-day trial. There's really no consequence to just giving something a test run, right? But when you're talking about a service, when you're talking about getting an entire product built, there's a lot of time invested in that, and there's a huge consequence on the cost side, right? Because you're putting money down on a promise that something is going to get built, and if that relationship does not work out, then you're in the hole in both cost and time. And so we were trying to identify areas where we could really very quickly become thought leaders in the area, because we wanted a one-to-many where we were able to, get up on stage in front of people at meetups and events and talk to a bunch of people about what we were doing and kind of find those interested prospective customers. And so in both New York and San Francisco, the markets for product development are just incredibly oversaturated. Sure. And there's so many huge hitters that are already there, right, that have written and authored books and, travel all over the world to speak on those topics. And in DC, again, you have a few of those, but relatively, it's not comparable in size, and so we chose DC because it was just an area that, in terms of product development, there was room for a niche like ours in doing fixed cost, fixed timeline product development, especially with web, mobile, and VR. And so, the story goes, we packed up a duffel bag. We had the idea one day. Mike, my co-founder, he held down the fort in Raleigh, and I left the very next day for DC. I slept out of my car and couch surfed for the first month, and in the first 2 weeks, I got $20,000 in pre-sales before ever starting the company. And from there, we kicked it off, and we've been profitable since day one. And so now, a year and 9 months in, we've delivered 38 products to market, ranging from kind of small founding teams that are bootstrapped to angel and VC companies to enterprise companies. And we've had Street Journal, Tech.co, The Guardian. So it's been a pretty wild and fascinating ride for less than 2 years.
I love it. And you've been in DC as long as the company has been alive, right? I mean, it was the same day, basically.
Yeah. Yep. Same day. Just packed up a duffel bag, came here, and haven't left since.
So what was it? A year and 9 months or so?
About a year and 9 months. Yeah.
So you've had some success, right? I mean, let's talk about the success. But before we do that, let's get right into Notion Theory. You kind of touched on it a little bit. Tell us exactly what it does, what you're good at. You want to be known as thought leaders in this industry. Let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts of Notion Theory.
Yeah, sure. So when we really kind of looked at the market in terms of product development, so Mike, my co-founder, and I, we were actually formerly non-technical, and we had done a startup previously. I mean, I graduated college as a pre-physical therapy major, and I was training agents and analysts for the FBI. I was not technical at all. And again, if you remember, you mentioned founder and developer in the introduction. So there's a story behind that. And so after our first startup, Mike and I both decided that we wanted to, rather than being the domain experts, we wanted to be the technical founders, right, that everyone's always looking for. And so at the time, I was doing some high-profile training. I was writing for Fitness Trainer Magazine, American Academy of Health and Fitness. So I stopped all the training, coaching, and writing, and Mike quit his job at Qualcomm in San Diego. And we both got a one-bedroom apartment. And we were 26, 27. We had bunk beds in this small one-bedroom apartment. And we spent the next almost 10 to 12 months just teaching ourselves how to code. And that was it.
Like that's hardcore.
Then,
you're basically giving up
insanely hardcore.
a career,
it was.
Right? To do this.
Everyone was like, you're fucking crazy, right? Because I'd spent my entire career in fitness. I mean, my entire youth and my life and my college career and 4 years after that was all in fitness. And then I stopped everything I was doing, put it all on the back burner, and went into an area in programming where I had no formal education, no experience, and no technical background.
Why did you decide? So you kind of mentioned it, but why this? I mean, you can be a founder, a non-technical founder.
Yes.
And still be completely successful. Why did you decide to learn it yourself?
So this experience, it's not too much of a deviation from most people's. Where if you were to ask anyone, what's kind of what is your need right now? If you ask startup founders at any of these meetups, almost the kind of synonymous answer between all of them is I need a tech co-founder, right? Or I need someone to build my product. Sure. And so for us, it was the same boat that we fell into, where we were always looking for that tech co-founder to kind of come on board and help us build it. And we eventually did find that tech co-founder to help us. But through the process, it was, the non-technical founders you're talking about, they are motivated. They have unwavering resolve. They are ready to go. They're so high on life and their idea and their vision, right? And they just want to get the wheels going. But they're sat there and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're selling vaporware and they're waiting, right? And every week, you're going through your sprints, your 1 week sprint, your 2 week sprint. There's these bugs that have to get fixed. And so it was just that feeling of helplessness where, I was able and willing to do anything. But in this particular case, I was unable to do anything because I did not know how to code. And after that startup, and the reason we decided to pursue it is because we didn't want to be helpless, right? We were just waiting for someone else to come by and just kind of, waiting on their motivation. And when they, kind of on their timeline, that was the problem, is that we weren't really as in control as we thought we were and as we wanted to be.
So the process of, what was the learning curve like? I mean, was it something you enjoyed? Was it something that you were kind of, pushing through every single day, hating
No, I
life just
actually
because you
hated
need
it.
it? You hated it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It sucked. It was just one of the most depressing like times of my life because I went from being very good at my career, my profession, and being well known, to then jumping into this realm where every day it was failure, and every day it was 4, 5, 6 hours spent on this particular error that kept coming up. It was a red screen of death. This is wrong. This is wrong. And so there were a lot of concepts that I just didn't know. I mean, when you're trying to learn a programming language from scratch, when you're starting out, it's really difficult, right? Because let's say you wanted to learn well, I won't use Japanese. Let's say German or Spanish. You have the English language as a frame of reference. And so you understand nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, kind of everything you need to kind of put together a sentence, right? And so then when you say, well, I know tree is tree in English, what is it in Spanish? It's really kind of syntax. What do you call tree? What do you call dog? And then you just kind of like, just kind of import that into how you would normally talk to someone. But with the computer language, it's not like that.
Yeah.
It's not written, and you don't teach yourself the same way you would in actual a regular language. And so literally it was just brute forcing, right? The book says this is how we do it. Okay, I'm going to believe it. I'm going to trust it. I'm just going to go along the way, right? And when you consider the depth and breadth of an application, I mean, it is so deep. And when you're starting out, you're just in your little corner, and everything's interconnected. You have no idea what the hell is going on, and so you just. Google and Stack Overflow were both my mentors and my teacher.
Okay, so now you're, over a year into this. How do you feel about your own personal skills right now?
Incredible. I mean, I would say the best competitive advantage that you can have is learning faster than everyone else, right? And so, and that relates to a myriad of topics. I mean, the faster you can learn a new skill, the faster you can learn how to manage personalities in a given situation, the faster you can learn about the problem you're solving, the customer you're solving it for, the solution they're willing to pay for. I mean, in the world of entrepreneurship, and you've done over 300 interviews, that speed is king. And so that was one of the reasons for teaching ourselves as well is to have that available to us. And so now, because we have the skill set, anytime that we have an idea, we're immediately able to just jump on it and within, a couple of days, a week, put a prototype together to then go out and accelerate our learning about that product idea and go test it.
So right now you're the founder, developer, and obviously the CEO, right? What do you spend the most time doing right now?
I would say what I enjoy spending most of my time doing is actually development.
Okay.
I found that once I got behind the terminal and I started to get better at coding, it became far more enjoyable because it's just you have superpowers. And like just with your fingers in a computer, you can create almost anything. And we're working pretty heavily on virtual reality right now. We have some internal products on the VR side, and so it's even more empowering to be able to kind of create these products in these environments and put on a headset and just step right into them.
Good. I want to talk about VR here in just a sec, but let's stick to this real quick. You mentioned that this is what you enjoy. Is that what you're spending most of your time doing, though? Or are you, customer acquisition or running the company? What's the deal?
So running the company, I actually put aside time 4 nights a week, plus the full Sunday on the weekend, to take care of all the business-related stuff. Because while I'm at work, I feel like kind of in my role as kind of the visionary and leader for the company, I feel it's important for me to kind of be embedded with the culture and be embedded with everyone else. And we're just a team full of engineers. And for me, it was important to kind of integrate myself with everyone and what everyone else is doing. And so, me doing all the business stuff while I'm there with everyone else while they're coding, I didn't feel it was conducive to building a really good culture per se, because it was kind of a disconnect, right? Where I'm off doing all the business stuff and everyone else there is developing. And so I kind of purposely pushed that to my own nights and weekends, so my free time considerably is spent doing that. And during the day, I spend the majority of my time coding and interacting with all the team members.
I love it. What do your clients look like?
One of the cool things about the company is that we're completely like domain agnostic. We have done everything from enterprise data plan management to food tech to ed tech to IP video streaming for a crisis app, social, you name it.
And what do you think?
We've
What do you think your sweet spot is? Does it?
um,
Do you
I
have
would
one?
say
Does it
just
matter?
no, just building shit. That's it. Just like have an awesome team of engineers, and like whether it's again web, mobile, wearables, hardware, VR, AR. We are the majority of us actually are either we have all mechanical, software, and electrical engineers, and the majority of us actually kind of cover two of those disciplines.
How big's your team?
6 people.
Okay, that's a good size.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So now VR is big now, right? I mean, we're hearing a lot
Oh, it's
about
getting
it.
there,
This is something
man.
that you're currently
Landscape's
working on.
really getting. Yep.
Tell us about
Uh,
it.
yeah. So we have well, just touching on VR. I mean, virtual reality itself is kind of like the last content medium, right? It's like the final frontier for content, and so it's really interesting to look at AR and VR because, like. One of the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about and doing is creating interfaces and interactions in virtual reality. We have an internal framework called Primrose, Primrose, so primrosevr.com. And so this is a framework we built to allow developers to build virtual reality products in virtual reality for virtual reality. And so if you have a VR product, and again, this is done using WebVR. So not your standard Unity and Unreal. And so there's a live executable terminal and console in the development environment. And so you're able to stand in your environment that you have built and make modifications right there on the fly and see everything update in literally less than half a second. It's really incredible. So rather than going into, say, Unity or Unreal, making the tweaks, rebuilding and compiling it, and then running the application, everything you can imagine as though you're actually standing in the game or in the environment or inside the application, and you're just modifying everything right there on the spot, and it's updating right in front of you, right? And so think if you were in, let's say you were an architect and you were showing someone a house and they said, well, what if that countertop, was marble instead of wood? And so with, our framework, for example, if they were both staying in that environment, they could just choose a texture and it would change right there immediately, right? Instead of the architect having to go back and change everything and then, re-upload the program.
So with VR, what is that going to do for the future of your company? And tell us about the industry. I mean, what is that going to look like if?
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's going to be the future of our company. We're doubling down pretty heavily on VR and AR. I would say with just web and mobile in general, it's not that it's getting boring, but it's fairly saturated at the moment in terms of ideas, right? I mean, how many bot companies have come out? I think they called it the year of the bots, where everyone has an idea for a bot now. There's a lot of money still to be made in kind of niche areas, say in like agriculture and farming, where certainly there's tech-related products for web mobile applications that could really shake up and improve efficiency there. But for the most part, the things people really want to do, right, in social and whatever else, that's kind of been overdone. But with VR, it really brings about some kind of really just shakes up again how you. I mean, I'm trying to find words, right, because I think one of the hardest things to explain to people is like what VR is. Because it's something you just can't describe to one. You have to experience it, right? Because like if you tell someone, well, you can just put on this headset and transport anywhere in the world and walk through the world, it sounds cool. They can kind of see how it might happen, but until you actually put the headset on and you are completely immersed in this world that looks almost identical to that place, and you can walk around and interact with things, it is completely different, right? Being able to just do that from your living room. And it's, again, as I mentioned before, it's like the final frontier for content and media. I mean, you have pictures that you can interact with, which are kind of 2D, which was nice when they came about. You have videos, right? But with videos, it's always from someone else's perspective. Yeah. And so they control the experience, right? So you watch the video and you're following the camera through their eyes and you're looking where they look and you're interacting with what they interact. But with VR, you're taking that to a completely different level. And so you're immersing yourself essentially in that environment. And then you are controlling your experience and you're touching what you want to touch. You're talking to who you want to talk to. You're walking wherever you want to go. It's really incredible.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Good luck to you on that.
Thanks.
Right now with the company that you're running, What's the hardest part of your job right now?
I think the hardest part of just our job in any is always like managing expectations. And I think that goes for almost every company. Again, more so for us because we do fixed cost,
Mhm.
fixed timeline product development. And so we guarantee a product at a price for the customer.
Yeah.
They like that because we say, let's say it's 6 weeks and let's say it takes us 8 weeks. Well, they don't pay any extra. That's on us to
Yeah.
deliver the
Yeah.
product, right? So they feel good because there's no hidden cost. But obviously, if the product runs 2 weeks over, they're okay that they don't have to pay. They would prefer to have their product in 6 weeks. And so I think managing expectations is really the most important one. It's the one that we spend the most time focusing on. And I recently took a 2 week trip to Japan. One of the most incredible things there was that the Japanese are so good at anticipating their customer needs before they even know what they need. And because they do that, they always exceed your expectations. So I was in Kyoto and it was winter. This was back in January. It was freezing, and I walked into a Starbucks at Kyoto, and inside there was a big bucket of blankets. Right? And so again, I walk up and I get my coffee, right? And the one thing I want to do is I want to sit in this heated room. I want to drink my coffee with both my hands cupped around it to warm my hands up. And I would love to have a blanket wrapped around my legs. And what do you know? There are blankets there waiting for me, right? I bought a packet of gum, this box of gum where you open the top up. And inside there was a little section of Post-it notes that came, a little pack of Post-it notes, right? Because again, they anticipated that I'm going to chew this gum, and at some point it's going to lose its flavor, and at some point I'm going to want to just throw it away. And rather than ending up on the floor or on the bottom of someone else's shoes, I could just take a Post-it note and I can wrap it up and put it back in, right? All wrapped up and done. The last one, they had these bottle caps. So on the water bottles, when you twisted off the cap, there was this kind of plastic thread that was attached to the bottle itself and the bottle cap, and then there was this little lip. And so what you did is when you twisted it off, you pulled the bottle cap back, and the lip on the end of the bottle cap flipped over this thread that you twisted the bottle cap off of, and it just sat there, right? So you didn't have to hold the bottle cap,
Cool.
you didn't have to hold it in another hand or put it down. You could just drink your water, and when you're done, you just push the bottle cap back over and twist it on. And so that experience really kind of influenced how we looked at everything in terms of, again, trying to always anticipate the customer's needs before they know what they need, because at that point you'll always exceed expectations. And if that doesn't happen, at least you will meet them.
Good. You're thinking about it. I love it. You know, this is your second go around, right? You were a
Yeah.
founder of
So
a previous company.
yeah,
I don't want to spend too much time on that,
sure.
but let's talk about the things that you learned
Mm.
from that experience, right? And so I guess right off the bat, was it a successful like
No.
exit, or did you
Well,
start?
oh no, no exit. No. We ended up, so it was Thrive. It was client management software for personal trainers. And again, I was a domain expert. And
Yeah.
so throughout the course of the company, we ended up, we were around for 3 years. I managed to get contracts with the American Academy of Health and Fitness, partnerships with the National Association of Fitness Certifications, customers as large as trainers from New York Jets, right? I lead all this, and you're like, holy hell, like, what the hell happened,
Yeah.
right? And so one of the key takeaways from that experience was that I was a domain expert. And so I think too often, right, the longer you let ideas marinate inside your head, the more dangerous they become, because like a prerequisite of being an entrepreneur is that you're really good at lying to yourself and you are completely delusional, right? And like that's good because you have to get excited about what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're selling, right? But the problem is when you believe your own hype to be true, that's when you screw yourself over. And that was my problem, is that I was really, really, really passionate about the solution and the technology we'd created rather than being passionate about the problem. And so the issue this creates is when you're not passionate about the problem, you can't always guarantee you're delivering value, right? Because you're focusing on the wrong things. And so we had built this technology and this solution that helped me, but then I didn't realize how hard behavior changes. So there's kind of two key lessons here in that behavior change is incredibly hard when you have to, I mean, your biggest competitor, whenever you're starting anything out, and certainly a product, is your customer's existing behavior. That's what you always have to focus on, right? Like, you don't need to worry about the other 20 companies that are in the space, because you're going to kill yourself before they ever kill you, right? You're going to die by suicide rather than homicide first. And so you have to focus on your customer's current behavior. And so one of my issues is that I was too focused on the solution. I knew that this was a better way, and that's what I believed. And I tried to force it on everyone, and I tried to push it on them and say, hey, like, this will make your business 1,000 times better. You'll make so much more money. But there's too much friction. And we ended up shutting down the company 3 years later, because by the time I realized what we had done wrong, I just did not have it in me to start it all over again. And essentially, we got about 35 customers recurring monthly on the SaaS model. But when we went back and interviewed all those customers and we really listened to them, we found that every one of those trainers had the exact same training style that I had. And so the product itself was not the sandbox it needed to be to adapt to kind of everyone's needs and everyone's workflows.
Interesting. So between the time that you shut that down to opening up the new startup, what was that time line?
Less than a year, probably about 10 months.
Okay. And was that the 10 months that you were learning your new
That's
skills,
exactly it.
right?
Yeah,
Nice.
I didn't waste any time just kind of diving into it. I mean, I was 25 at the time when I shut my last company down, and I just decided, if it's a good idea now and it's still a good idea in 3 years, then I'll pursue it again. But being 25, I'll come across something later.
Go ahead.
Sorry, and I was going to say to that point, it's. I would tell people, I guess, like, one of the most important concepts to consider and take in is that, like, the idea does not matter that much, right? And so, like, a good exercise you can do to really illustrate this is you can take a room of 40 people, right, or even 10 people, and you can give them all the exact same idea and say, okay, go out and come back in a month. And in a month, you will check in to see how each person has progressed, right? And so what you will find is that one or two people of everyone in that group will have gotten customers and traction and maybe some revenue, right? But they'll have certainly separated themselves from the rest of the pack, while the other ones have made little to no progress, right? And so you have to ask yourself, how is that possible if the idea is so special, right? And the answer is because it's not. It is the execution that matters. And so it's really important not to get married or wed to a particular idea. I mean, again, this is why investors say they invest in the team, right? Because they know the idea is going to take on many forms, but if you invest in the right team and they're able to execute, given any situation, they'll be able to thrive in it.
Yeah, with the position that we're in because of the podcast and the co-working space and the events that we host, we see a lot of these entrepreneurs that are like, I have this great idea, I can't talk about it, or if they do want to talk about it, they it's very hush hush, right? They don't want the world to know. And I'm like, yeah, that's great and all, but I bet that somebody else has tried it, doing it, or succeeding at it.
Oh, they are.
And it's more that, like you mentioned, it's more the team, right? The way you execute. And I would rather spend my money on the team than the idea any day.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's so naive. I mean, like, even VR, right? VR was, I think, up and running back in the 1960s. I've been thinking about this for 50 years. It's not really new stuff.
Well, it's, with the position that you're in, right? Because the industry you're in, the customers that you have, the clients that you work with, you must see a lot of chatter, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different things. I think that you're kind of in a position to talk about this quite a bit. How do our listeners, the entrepreneurs that are working on their own startups, what's the best way to validate their ideas, right? Without spending thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes. So the most important thing is what I mentioned before, in that your best competitive advantage is learning faster than everyone else. Because the second that you decide that you're going to pursue your startup, you now have a runway. And that runway is time, that runway is money, and that runway is motivation. And it is running out, and the clock is ticking as soon as you decide to pursue your startup. And so, again, speed is king. You have to accelerate your learning to better understand what is the problem you're solving, who you're solving the problem for, and ultimately what the solution is that they're willing to pay for, because that is what matters most. If you do not have customers, it does not matter how beautiful or innovative your product is, it will fail. And so when you're going out there and you're trying to validate a product idea, whatever is in your head right now, go out and talk to people. Identify, 10 potential customers and just have a conversation with them. I mean, that was exactly how we started. Excuse me. That's exactly how we started. I went to DC and I just had an inkling of an idea, right? And I had a bunch of assumptions, but you have to be careful because, again, as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to string together a lot of plausible assumptions to kind of create this truth, right? Or a lot of assumptions to create this plausible truth. And so that is completely remedied by going out and validating your idea with potential customers, by getting in their face, talking to them, and most importantly, seeing if they will give you money. So a great story I use to illustrate this all the time is I was in San Francisco, and I just finished at a conference, and there was a woman that had just left Google to pursue her startup idea, and so we went to a nearby restaurant to have dinner, and we're sitting there, and she was so convinced that her product was going to sell millions because she had talked to a lot of female focus groups and they said how great it was. And so the product, it was a ring that you wore. And, if you were running around, it was kind of like there was a button on the bottom. It was like an emergency button. So you can think of it as almost like, if you're in a troubling situation, it's like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And you press that button and poof, they're there, they take you and you're gone, right? And so again, she had talked to a lot of women who said, well, the idea is great. I love if I'm walking around, if I feel threatened or in an awkward situation, that I can just press this button and get help. So again, assumptions that creates this plausible truth. And she has sold this to herself in her head. But when there's no consequence to giving an answer, people will sometimes just give the easy answer to get out. Sure. Or operate in this perfect world, right? They go, yeah, if I had all the money in the world or I didn't care, I had an extra, $1,000 to spend, sure, I'd say yes to this. So again, there's no consequence in those individuals saying yes to her because she never asked for anything from them. And so in that restaurant, I was pushing back and say, don't manufacture this yet. You do not know if this is going to work. And it's a really hefty investment. And so we went over, there was a table in the corner. And there were two ladies in their late 20s. And I said, let's go over there and let's go validate it with them. And of course, being the gentleman that I am, I said ladies first and let her go. And so we interrupted their dinner, their poor souls. But then she talked to them about the product idea to kind of get a gauge on, if it was something they wanted, if they were interested in it. And the whole time they're just bobbing heads and rhythm. And they're like, girl, I understand you. I got you. I know what you mean, right? Because all women have experienced that at some point. And then she kind of turns to me and looks at me and says ha, see, they love it. And so then I come in and I say, thanks so much. We're actually co-founders from, we're launching a Kickstarter in 2 weeks. How much would you pay for a product like this? And almost in harmony, they said $150. I said, perfect. We're doing a pre-order special where if you order the ring before we start the Kickstarter, we're doing half off. And so each of you would get the ring for $75. Do you mind giving us your information now so we can go ahead and put you in for the order because you get it half off? Right? And then it all came in. Oh, well, I'd have to see it. I'd have to touch it. I'd have to see how it really works, right? And all the excuses came in because now you were asking to tangibly take something away from them. And when you ask a stranger for money, they get very honest very quick.
Man, I love that. That is a great story. Sometimes we get, like you mentioned, we get caught up in our own hype. And, it might be the best idea to us, but if nobody's out there to buy it or willing to spend the money to give you to take the product, it's not going to do anything, right? Good, I love it.
There was another company. It was alcohol delivery. They were doing alcohol delivery, and this is a fucking brilliant idea. You can get alcohol delivered to your door, okay? And so they went out to go validate it, and they just went and asked people, would you want your alcohol delivered to your door? Well, no shit, Sherlock. Everyone is going to say yes. If I don't have to leave my house to go get a bottle of Jack, of course I'm going to say yes. I'd love to have. But they weren't really giving anything for it again, right? They just said, yes, I like this idea. The entrepreneur asked, wouldn't this be great? And so I told them, when you go out again, and I made them go out again, almost everyone said yes to the idea. And so when they went out again, we then added, after they said yes, we said, you would then have to pay an additional 20% delivery charge, right? For us to go pick up the alcohol and deliver it to your door. Would you do it? And 75% of people said no.
Oh, nice.
Again, they asked, tangibly, they asked, you're going to have to give me money. Would you be willing to do that, right? Because they were getting all these people that were saying yes and signing up. And then they went out again, and they got the numbers and emails from these people, and then all of a sudden they said, and we're going to have to charge an extra 20% to deliver it. And people quickly said, you know what? I can just walk down to the store and grab my own beer or go get it after work. And so again, like you hear it all the time, cash is king. It is so true.
I love it. That's valuable advice, and I think something that our audience can definitely learn from and use in their own startups. Whether they have an idea or whether they're well into their own product or services now. So no, that's perfect. I'm glad that you brought that up, and obviously you with the experiences that you have, that's something that we can kind of take and run with it for sure. Yeah. Now, when all of this is said and done, as we kind of wrap up here, when all of this is said and done, and at the end of the day, how do you personally want to be remembered?
Oh, man, that's like the $1 million question. I guess for me, it's more being remembered as an enabler. And so actually, finding people are doing some of the most amazing things and really kind of enabling them to get their products and ideas out there and into the market. And so I see myself in kind of this unique position where I have quite a bit of entrepreneurial experience in getting products to market, over 38 products now, and I happen to also be an engineer myself. And so I kind of am able to talk the talk with the engineers when they have their ideas and they're trying to get it to market. And I'm also able to translate the business requirements on the non-technical side to technical requirements. And so really what we're doing with Notion Theory is trying to kind of be the stand-in CTO for so many of these companies and kind of help on the engineering side, both to get these products built in an accelerated time frame so they can accelerate their learning about the problem they're trying to solve and the customers they're solving it for. But most importantly, to a lot of non-technical people, really trying to team up with them and enable them to get these great ideas into the market and not get bottlenecked at the technical side.
Well, you're certainly well on your way of being able to accomplish that, so I appreciate it. Now, so as we wrap this up, then tell us where our audience can find you. If they want to reach out to you, if they want to learn more about the company or you specifically, where can we find you online?
Sure. So my name is Kristian with a K. I go by the nickname Special K if you ever see me. But if you were to spell it, it's Kristian, B as in boy, OUW. So that's the Twitter handle. Kristian at Notion Theory is the email. And then you can just go to Notion Theory, compound word. .com and just reach out to us. Again, we're in DC. We have the virtual reality setup. So if any of you are in the area, seriously, just drop us a line, and we're happy to have you come by and try it out.
So Outliers, you can go to outliermagazine.co. That's outliermagazine.co. Where you'll be able to find Kristian's website, social media accounts, email. Feel free to reach out to him. And like you mentioned, if you're in DC, look him up, call him up, connect.
Please.
Hey, yes. Kristian, this was a lot of fun, man. We really appreciate you talking about the company, the words of wisdom.
Thank you so much for having. Yeah, and again, just one last word. When you say words of wisdom, to you viewers, this might sound so trivial, right? It's like, well, you told me how do I validate my product idea? I just go talk to people. And then you told me, again, how do I validate? We'll ask them for money. I'm telling you guys, they're words of wisdom because they work and because they're true. And it's called wisdom because they've persevered over so many decades, right? People trying to overcomplicate things and find all these quote unquote growth hacks, which is a totally convoluted term in and of itself. If you just do the basics and you are consistent, just like working out, you're going to see results.
What I like about this is, you didn't read this in a textbook. You didn't hear from a speech. No. You've been through it. You've seen it work. And I'm assuming you've seen it when it doesn't work, right? That's the valuable piece of advice right there. So we really appreciate it.
Yep. And the hottest fires forge the hardest steel is just my favorite quotes. Write that down somewhere. And every time things get tough or things get rough, just take a look at that and just press on, right? You just, as an entrepreneur, you just have to have unwavering resolve.
Outliers, connect with Kristian. He's doing an amazing job. Kristian, we appreciate it. Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.